I'll tell you why I'm excited about the way the LA Kings have looked so far this preseason. That's next on this edition of Locked On LA Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Kings fans, welcome to Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On LA Kings your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. We'd love for you to leave us a positive comment on Apple Podcasts if you're a fan of the show. And we are on YouTube. Please like and subscribe if you're enjoying this content. I'm Eddie Garcia, your host of Locked On LA Kings. I worked in sports media for the past 30 years, 20 plus years at the Fox Sports Radio Network. I'm also co-host of the Puck Podcast, a weekly NHL review show that's been putting out content for the last 18 years, and a passionate LA Kings fan for over 30 years. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. The countdown to the NHL season continues as we have reached October. The LA Kings season opener is October 10th in Buffalo against the Sabres, now 9 days away. Kings home opener October 24th in San Jose, or against San Jose at home. That's 23 days away. The Kings have now played 4 of their 6 preseason games and have looked pretty good so far this preseason for what that's worth. Last night, it was game 4 of the preseason, the second of back-to-back games against the Anaheim Ducks, this time in Orange County. As for the Kings lineup in this one, a top line of Phillip Danault, Tanner Jeannot, and Akil Thomas playing on the top line. So an interesting move there to get Akil Thomas playing with some high-quality line mates. The second line is a line I've liked a lot so far this preseason. Quinton Byfield centering Kevin Fiala and Warren Foegele. The third line had Alex Turcotte centering the line of Jack Studnicka and Samuel Fagemo. And the fourth line, a line of redwood trees. We had Samuel Hellenius, who is at 6'6", with Andre Lee, 6'5", and Parker Jones, 6'7", as the third or the fourth line for the LA Kings, which certainly had a lot of size to it. Your defensive pairings were Jordan Spence with Mikey Anderson, Vladislav Gavrikov with Kyle Burroughs and Andreas Englund, and Jacob Moverara. Your goaltenders were Darcy Kemper and David Riddick. As for the opponent, the Anaheim Ducks, it was filled with a decent group of NHLers. In net, though, was Oscar Dansk. He is going to be the backup goalie to start the season for the Anaheim Ducks, with John Gibson, their veteran goalie, injured. I believe he was out with an appendicitis, and so it'll be Oscar Dansk as the number 2 goalie to start the season in Anaheim, but he got the start against the Kings in the preseason game last night. As for the game, from an LA Kings standpoint, a bit of a slow start for LA in this one, but they would eventually get their game going and roll to a convincing victory. LA opened up the scoring in the opening period with newcomer Tanner Jeannot passing it to the point to defenseman Jacob Moverara. He put a shot on net, save was made, but Jeannot was right there for the rebound and the putback, giving LA the 1-0 lead. You could give Jeannot the assist and the goal. A bit on that one, the secondary assist anyway. Second period, Kings would add to the lead. Kevin Fiala would take a nice outlet pass from the Kings zone from Warren Foegele, skated into the zone. Quinton Byfield was absolutely flying down the center of the ice, going hard to the net and drawing defenders with him. That left defenseman Vladislav Gavrikov with a lot of space trailing the play. Fiala and Gavrikov worked a perfect give and go, with Gavrikov scoring to make it 2-0 Kings. LA would add to the lead after Tanner Jeannot made a hit in the Anaheim end to force a turnover. Phillip Danault would get the puck, make a nice feed to Akil Thomas going to the net, and redirect right past the goaltender. And the Kings had a 3-0 lead. And then finally in the third period, LA would battle along the boards in the Ducks' end. Jordan Spence would eventually put a shot on net. Jack Studnicka was in front providing a screen. The save was made, but the rebound went to Quinton Byfield, who scored 4-0 Kings, and that would be the final. Darcy Kemper in net would make the shutout stand, and the Kings would sweep the home and home against the Ducks again with a convincing 4-0 win. Shots on goal favored the Kings 25-23. The power plays were not effective for either team, although the Kings PK came up big. The Ducks were 0-4 with a man advantage. LA was 0-2. Faceoffs favored the Kings 27-21. Block shots, the Ducks had 15, the Kings 14, and hits favored the Kings 24-19. As for our 3 stars of the game, a couple of the newcomers on here. Tanner Jeannot I'm going to go with Akil Thomas as our number 3 star with a goal and an assist. Tanner Jeannot is the number 2 star, also with a goal and assist, also some effective physical play from him as well. But the number 1 star goes to Darcy Kemper with 23 shots on and 23 saves in the shutout victory. So all in all, a solid effort by the Kings. Again, a bit of a slow start, but they got their game going and were clearly the better team in this game. I thought, just some thoughts on the game, I thought the Kings' forecheck was the best it's been so far in the preseason. A little bit more of what I think Jim Hiller is looking to see from the team. I continue to be a big fan of the Byfield line with Kevin Fiala and Warren Foegele. Again, I would love to see this line be the Kings' second line throughout the regular season. Maybe that eventually happens. From what we think we've seen so far, they're going to be the third line, but we'll see. But I just think they look so good together. Quentin Byfield driving the play, Fiala setting up his teammates, and Warren Foegele doing a little bit of everything. By the way, Quentin Byfield, we know, moving to center with the added responsibility of taking faceoffs. He won 76% of his faceoffs in this game against the Ducks. That is excellent as he, again, takes on more responsibility being a center this season. Again, after a bit of a slow start, I thought the Kings really locked it down defensively in the second and third periods. Not many high-quality scoring chances for the Ducks in the second or the third. I mentioned the Kings' penalty kill looked strong in this one. And Darcy Kemper, obviously getting the shutout, very solid in net. In addition to doing what we expect him to do, which is, make the saves that he sees, make the play he needs to make. He had a couple of high-quality saves early on in this one, including stopping Ducks' leading scorer from a year ago, Frank Vetrano, on a breakaway in the first period. So a lot of good things for the LA Kings in this win. As far as some of the specific things I liked from this game for the Kings, I always have to start out with this. No injuries to report, which is always a good thing. But the goals that were scored by the Kings, and a lot of the goals that they have scored so far in the preseason, getting shots and scoring opportunities from high percentage areas, in close, right around the net. Tanner Jeannot and Akil Thomas in particular in this game, scoring goals that I think Jim Hiller has been talking about, what he wants to see more of, going to the net, having a net front presence, crashing the net, providing screens, being there for deflections. Again, those blue-collar kind of goals. But it's not just throw it on net and get a rebound. There's been some really great setups as well, like we talked about with Phillip Deneau, with a beautiful pass right on the stick of Akil Thomas for pretty much a tap in. So it's been a nice mix of skill, but also, again, that emphasis of more going to the net and attacking the net. The Kings have done a good job of it this preseason. Very encouraging, I think, so far. And they certainly did it in this win against the Ducks. I thought the Kings defense was a little more offensive minded than I have seen so far this preseason, especially without Brent Clark in the lineup. Nothing spectacular, but shots on goal when they had a chance to get shots on goal. And again, when you're getting players crashing the net, you need those shots from the point to get on net, as we saw from Jacob Moverar in this one on the Tanner Jeannot goal. Vladislav Gavrikov jumping up in the play and scoring a nice goal as well. And Mikey Anderson even had some decent shots from the point, including one that went off the post. So again, a lot of good things to like in this game, and a lot of good things to like from what we've seen from the Kings so far this preseason. As for the quote from head coach Jim Hiller regarding this win, he said, quote, "I didn't like the first period. What I liked was how we came out in the second and the third. I didn't think we played our game at all in the first period, but you saw kind of a refocus and a come out and play how we wanted to play. And I thought we did that. We were pretty effective. When we did that, we were pretty effective." Again, that was Kings head coach Jim Hiller. So how much stock should we put into what we've seen from the Kings so far this preseason? We'll talk about that next here on Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. And of course, FanDuel is there for you to bet on Major League Baseball's postseason. The Dodgers are a +35 to win it all. You've got college football, The NBA will be coming up soon, and of course, the NHL season as well. Join FanDuel, browse the latest betting odds of your favorite sports and teams on the Sportsbook app, and get in on the action. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. All right, so I did want to finish up one more thing from the game last night against the Ducks before I kind of get into what we've seen so far this preseason from the Kings overall. But there are some position battles going on for the final roster spots for the LA Kings. I think specifically as far as the players that were in the lineup last night, Akil Thomas, Samuel Fagemo, and Andre Lee, along with Jack Studnicka, our guys all battling for one of the final couple of roster spots from the forward position. As far as those four guys specifically, I thought Akil Thomas had his best game of the preseason by far. I'd mentioned it in a couple of the games that he had played previously. I was looking for more from him. I think it certainly helped that he got to play with some quality line mates in this one in Phillip Danault and Tanner Jeannot. But a great game from Akil Thomas. Saw time on the penalty kill in this game as well and made some nice plays there as well. So a good game from Akil Thomas, who's been pretty quiet so far this preseason. Samuel Fagemo, you could argue that he would certainly benefit from playing with some better line mates, but still not much from him this preseason. He provides no physical play. He doesn't really forecheck much at all. He doesn't really set up his teammates. He doesn't kill penalties. If he's not getting his shot, which he didn't get in the game against the Ducks on Monday, he's kind of useless. And I hope that's not too harsh, but that's what I'm seeing. So I know he had an incredible season in the AHL, scored a ton of goals, put up the numbers, but so far in this preseason, not a ton positive to me from Samuel Fagemo. And then you look at a guy like Andre Lee. He didn't obviously put up big numbers in the AHL last year, and he didn't have a big game in this one against the Ducks, but he does at least forecheck, and he does use his size to get in there and be disruptive, and he'll go to the net and be a problem. No one's going to worry about Samuel Fagemo going to the net and being around the goaltender. He's not going to do that, and he's not going to be effective if he tries to do that. Andre Lee, however, can be effective at that. So that's why, to me, when you're looking at these two guys head-to-head, you got to give the edge to Andre Lee. Now, if Fagemo was filling up the net, that would be one thing, but he isn't. And even with the shots he's had on goal, not a lot of good scoring opportunities, and frankly, a lot of pretty easy saves for the goaltenders against Fagemo so far. I did want to mention Jack Studnicka. He does continue to be a guy who is, I think, noticeable is the best way to put it. He's not doing anything spectacularly, but he is noticeable. He does go to the net. He is making positive plays. Again, nothing that's going to blow you away, but has been a positive overall this preseason for the LA Kings, and that might be enough to get him a final spot on the roster. As for the defense, we're talking about, again, Andreas Englund, Jacob Moverar, and Kyle Burroughs. I think they're all in the running for a final roster spot, although we do have news on one of these players coming up in just a bit. And Moverar did have an assist in this game, which is great. Otherwise, I thought all three of them were okay. I didn't think any of them were necessarily great, but they all did their jobs effectively. Nobody had any real big mistakes or turnovers that led to any scoring chances. Andreas Englund had really the only big hit of the game for either side in this one, a check in the first period. We did mention that Moverar had the assist, and Burroughs was, just kind of good in whatever he did. But it seems like, as far as these three players, that Kyle Burroughs is kind of the benefit of circumstance because he's a right-handed shot, and Moverar and Englund are not. So it appears that he will be, in some way or another, replacing Drew Doughty on the right side. You've already got Brant Clark. You've already got Jordan Spence, and he's the other right-handed shot. So, and I don't think he's, again, when you look at those three defensemen, Moverar and Englund and Burroughs, have any of those three guys really stood out positively? Not really. Have any of them stood out negatively? No, not really. So when it's all said and done, if they're all basically even, I guess you would go with Burrows. Andreas Engelman obviously has the NHL experience with the Kings. Last year, playing in just about every game, he does bring a more physical presence than either of those other two players. So you give him that check off that box for him. But I think all in all, it looks like Kyle Burrows probably will get that spot because he is a right-handed shot. And this is why I've honestly said, and I'll hit on this again, that I think Brandt Clark should be on the top pairing to start the season because, is it going to be Kyle Burrows? And if it is, and I don't mean to be disrespectful to him in any way, but Kyle Burrows isn't if your argument against Brandt Clark is that he's not ready to be a top pairing defenseman, well, I certainly could argue Kyle Burrows is not ready to be a top pairing defenseman. He's never been a top pairing defenseman in his NHL career. And if he's there, he's going to be forced to be there because he does have the more NHL experience. But honestly, I'd rather have either Brandt Clark or even Jordan Spence over him on that top pairing. And again, I will just reiterate, I'm not expecting Brandt Clark, or I'm not saying I think Brandt Clark could just step in and fill all the shoes and the roles that Drew Doughty filled. I'm not saying that. I think it's going to be a collective effort among the defensemen to even try to evenly distribute out all those minutes that Drew Doughty ate up. I just think Brandt Clark is way more skilled than Kyle Burrows. And while he doesn't have the experience and there could be some growing pains with him, I just think the upside is just more. And I think he has the attitude to be able to handle that kind of a challenge. But we shall see how it all plays out. Again, Kyle Burrows, I would say, the advantage amongst those defensemen. And as far as the forwards go, a good game from Akil Thomas. And I think Jack Studnicka has also kind of made an impression. So we'll see which way the coaching staff for the LA Kings is leaning when it comes to one of those final forward spots and one of those final defensive spots. So what do we think of the Kings preseason so far? And should we put a lot of stock into what we've seen so far, especially the record 3-0-1? And the one loss was to a Utah team that pretty much skated its NHL roster because it was their first ever game in Utah and they wanted to make a good impression. So that wasn't exactly a fair matchup if you want to call it that. But I would say I wasn't all that excited about the Kings offseason moves and the plan that they were looking to implement. But I have to say, so far from what I've seen this preseason, even with the injury to Drew Doughty, I am feeling pretty encouraged by what I've seen. And I think the Kings have kind of taken the Drew Doughty injury in stride, hoping that he can come back at the end of the season and maybe give him a boost. But, the record is the record. But just what I've seen from the Kings, the new players look good. Tanner Jeannot has been a physical presence. He's got 2 goals in 2 games, and he knows his role, and he seems very comfortable in playing that role. Warren Foegele is a bit of a Swiss Army knife. He can do a lot of good things on the ice. He's a good passer. He has a bit of a scoring touch. He's not afraid to get dirty and go hard to the net. Not outstanding in any way, but just a solid all-around guy, really complements the other players well. Darcy Kemper in net has been solid. So the new guys have looked good. The young guys, I think, have looked good. Alex Turcotte has been solid this preseason. Alex Laferriere has 3 goals in 2 games. So young guys looking to step up and do their role, fulfill their role, and then some. And of course, the important players for the Kings have looked good too. Only 1 game for Anze Kopitar and Adrian Kempe, but they were phenomenal. Kevin Fiala's flying around all over the ice. And I think probably specifically Quentin Byfield has looked solid in his transition to the center position. So again, I'll admit, I wasn't a huge believer in what the direction was that the Kings were going in and the players that they picked up in the offseason. But I'm starting to be a bit of a believer. I'm seeing the differences from head coach Jim Hiller and what he's preaching and what the Kings are doing on the ice. And again, the new guys and the young guys all look very comfortable and are playing very well. So it's just the preseason, and I don't think we should put too much into necessarily the results. But it's, to me, it's more about how the Kings are playing and how they are different from a season ago and how the new ideas from Jim Hiller are being integrated so far by new players, by young players, and by old players. It's so far, again, I've been pleasantly encouraged by what I've seen so far from the Kings this preseason. We do have some roster news to update you on as the Kings get ready to head north of the border. We'll do that next here on Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. Those of us that live in the LA area, so lucky. We have so many opportunities to check out live events, sports for sure. I went to the Chargers-Chiefs game this past Sunday, but it's not just about sports. We've got theater events, comedy events. You've got concerts to go to as well. But no matter what you enjoy or what you want to go check out, you should do what I do and use Gametime for all your ticket needs. Gametime has a new feature called Gametime Picks. It makes getting tickets to your favorite live events even easier. Gametime filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time scrolling through thousands of tickets. And that includes some great offers on Dodger postseason tickets as well. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. You can save even more. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime. All right, we do have some roster moves to update you on from today involving the LA Kings and the Ontario Reign. Forward Jeff Malott was placed on waivers yesterday. He has cleared waivers and he has been assigned to Ontario in the AHL. Forward Samuel Helenius has been loaned to the AHL. Maybe a little bit of a surprise. I've really liked what I've seen from Samuel Helenius so far in the rookie faceoff and this preseason. Certainly not suggesting he's ready for an NHL role, but really encouraged by what I've seen from him and looking forward to seeing how he continues to develop a big guy with some skill in the AHL this coming season. Jacob Moverar was put on waivers by the Kings today for the purpose of assigning him to the AHL. Now, if he clears waivers, he will join the Ontario Reign. We'll have to wait and see about that. Defenseman John Parker Jones released from his player tryout and will report to Ontario. And goaltender Drayden McKay released from his player tryout, and he will report to Ontario as well, as the Ontario Reign have officially opened up their training camp. As far as some of the players here, I would say I don't know much about Drayden McKay. I'm guessing maybe he becomes the Kings goaltender, maybe with the Greenville Swamp Rabbits in the ECHL. John Parker Jones is an intriguing prospect, 6'7", has a little bit of a nasty side to him, takes a ton of penalties though. But I think the Kings are kind of intrigued by what he offers with his size. The big one is obviously Jacob Moverar. And I know I saw on social media when the Kings announced this move, there was some displeasure over it from some, which is typical because that's what people do on social media. And I don't really understand it, to be honest with you. I have nothing against Jacob Moverar, but he hasn't done anything to me to show me that he deserves being that Kings extra defenseman. He's not going to get the benefit of the doubt over Andreas Englund because Englund has the experience with the Kings and he's physical. And we talked about Kyle Burrows being the right-handed shot. So Jacob Moverar is kind of honestly the odd man out. And I get it. I don't understand, particularly people that are like, oh, he should be with the Kings over Andreas Englund. I don't really understand why. Is he more physical? Does he bring any kind of a physical presence? No. Is Moverar much better defensively than Andreas Englund? I don't think so. Does he provide more offensive upside? Maybe a little bit more. Yeah, I'll give you that. But ultimately, I don't see, this being a big deal. Now I would like for him to clear waivers and for the Kings to be able to retain him and have him in Ontario. But if he doesn't, I don't see this as a huge loss. To be honest with you, I think he's kind of just a guy. I'm not saying he's a bad hockey player. I'm not saying he couldn't be that extra defenseman on an NHL roster or even that sixth defenseman. But if you look at it, he's the extra guy, or he's the guy in the AHL that you call up if you have any issues. That's who he is, and that's who he's always going to be. And so that's that with him. So I really don't get the outcry about him being placed on waivers personally. No injury update on Drew Doughty. Still have not heard if and when he's going to have surgery for that broken ankle, but we have heard on the recent broadcast from Nick Nixon, he has passed along word that the surgery is going to happen sometime soon this week. Exactly what day, don't know. But when it happens, if the Kings are able to give us an update on how the surgery went, we will certainly pass it along, but we don't have any information on that at this point. All right, so the Kings are on their way to Quebec. We are not going to see the Kings in person until we get close to passing out candy in late October. They have 2 more preseason games. Both will be in Quebec, October the 3rd against the Boston Bruins and October the 5th against the defending Stanley Cup champion Florida Panthers. Then it's 5 days off, and then the bullets or the pucks start flying for real. And again, I got to admit, I'm starting to get a little excited about what the Kings are doing and looking forward to this journey with the LA Kings. You never know what you're going to get once a season starts. We all think we know, and sometimes we do, but there's always surprises. There's always things that we didn't factor in, and there are teams that that come, I won't say out of nowhere, but there are teams that defy expectations, and who knows, maybe the LA Kings are in fact one of those teams. Looking forward to this season, looking forward to having you with us all season long as we take this journey together with our LA Kings. For you everydayers, those of you that listen and watch Locked On LA Kings every day, coming up tomorrow, I have a very special show that I'm very excited about. We are going to have our first LA Kings Roundtable show. Joining me will be Austin Stanovich of the Hockey News, Russell Morgan from Hockey Royalty, and Carl Bolikian from the Bannerman podcast, also a Hockey News contributor. Very excited to get to talk to all of these guys in a bit of a different format than we usually have them on. Definitely looking forward to checking out that show. Hope you guys will join us for that special LA Kings Roundtable show coming up on Wednesday. Of course, we'll have our typical Friday fan feedback show. How you feeling about the Kings and what you've seen so far this preseason? Are you starting to feel a bit more optimistic like me or not? You can share your thoughts by sending an email, lockedoneddie@gmail.com. And as always, you can leave your comments on the YouTube episodes if you're watching the show. We'd love for you to stay interactive with the show on social media. Follow us on X, Twitter, and Instagram. We are at Locked On LA Kings. I'm Eddie Garcia. Thank you for listening and watching this episode of Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Have a great rest of your day. We'll talk to you tomorrow. And as always, go Kings, go.